All right, everybody. Welcome in to Load the Box. I'm your host, Jordan Hawthorne, joined, as always, by the marvelous and the wonderful Jack Day. Before we tell any jokes or before we get into anything too serious this week, we've been on a break, right? As I'm sure people know. And with that break, some tragic news came in, I think 3 weeks ago now. Founder of Popal PTSD, owner operator of Vikings territory, and all of the UFTA sports group that he had started. Joe Johnson unfortunately passed away while we were on break. We didn't say anything. I didn't tweet anything about it because I felt insincere. I worked with Joe. He gave me my shot to start typing articles and doing all of that, and then he said, "Hey, who wants to do a podcast?" And then Load the Box was born, and I've told that story 3 dozen times. So I just want to really quickly just Joe was a great guy. He gave me and I think Jack his stout as well. My condolences are with his family, and I don't like to talk about regrets when somebody passes away, but I really wish that if I could just give him that thank you one more time that I gave him so many times. I really wish I could just tell him one more time, thank you for giving me a platform to share my dumb Vikings jokes and my hatred of the Saints and all of that stuff. Jack, I'll let you say a couple of words, and then afterwards, we can really dive into the show.
Yeah, I said some words on the other podcasts I do as well. And I second everything you said. I don't know. I mean, going back to, I think it was essentially when I wrapped up my internship with the Vikings, I had no idea where I wanted to go. I knew I wanted to do something around writing and with football around the Vikings. And like you said, Joe gave me that opportunity. I don't think if there wasn't a Joe Johnson, there would not be a Load the Box. We wouldn't know each other. This podcast would not exist. And obviously want to say thanks to him for starting that platform. And I said this as well already, but condolences and everything go out to his family. I can't imagine what they're going through right now. But I don't know if Joe is the type of person that would want us to sit there. I think he'd want us to appreciate kind of what he's given us, and just to take that one step further too. I mean, me being in Minnesota, I know you follow some of the beat reporters, but it's insane the impact. I didn't really realize this, like, and we've been doing this podcast for over 2 years now, but the impact he left not only on the UFTA and Vikings territories of the world, but on the Minnesota Vikings media network, if you will. He touched everyone, and it was a hard day, obviously, when the news came out on Twitter. But just seeing everyone kind of say, you know what, if it wasn't for Joe, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. And that just, I think it speaks volumes of the person that Joe was and how he was always trying to get us instead of himself to the next level. And I thought that was amazing. So like I said, condolences to his friends and family, and everyone that is within this network that we've built over the last few years. It wasn't a fun news nugget to get, but the show has to go on, and I know that's how Joe would want it to be.
Oh, absolutely. Joe would be, I think, pretty pissed off if he knew that we just spent 3.5 minutes or however long it was talking about him, and that's the most minuscule amount of time. But the guy loved the Vikings. We love the Vikings. Let's talk about these Vikings, Jack. Training camp started. The Hall of Fame game. This isn't Vikings related, but the Hall of Fame game starts. I think Sunday is when that is. We got a football season, and it's
Yeah,
chugging
the
right
pads are
along.
back at camp too. I
Yes.
mean, that was one of the coolest thing too. Just seeing physical contact is back. We didn't see training camp really last year. I was out at training camp on Thursday. We can talk about some of that stuff, obviously, but it's amazing to have football back. I've said this every show I've done in the last 2 months, but the last like 2 months after the draft, when the Twins are struggling and the Wolves don't make the playoffs and the Wild are a first round exit, it gets to be a weird time in Minnesota sports. If you're a Minnesota sports fan, there is not a lot to look forward to, and football coming back, albeit with some of the weird news that we've gotten in the last week, it's a great feeling.
Yeah, there's a lot of controversy. See, this is going to be a fun week, a challenging week for us co-hosting this show together, because there's a lot of controversial subjects going on during training camp that we get to kind of tiptoe around without, at least in my case, not really giving too many opinions, because I just want to talk about throwing oblong-shaped balls and trying to stop people from throwing them. And I really don't want to talk about, viruses and vaccines and all that. But we'll get to that really quickly in the chat. Chris Paxita is talking about Jameis Winston looking like an idiot for the Saints during training camp. I always love to see the Saints look bad. And then also saying rest in peace, Joe. Rest in peace, Joe. We appreciate that, Chris. Let's jump in with the I want to jump in with the Jeff Gladney news. That's where I want to begin this week, if that's okay with you. I think that his camp is obviously upset. They released kind of a shady tweet about how, apparently the Vikings don't believe in innocent until proven guilty. I think I'm of the opinion, if you get yourself in a situation where those allegations are brought against you, you've made enough of a oopsie that, you're going to then, lose out on some things. And who knows, maybe the guy gets picked up. Maybe he goes on to have a long NFL career. At the end of the day, I'm not really worried about football with him. I'm more worried about, one, if he did do that, getting bad men out of the league, because, we should not give them, millions of dollars to play games. But two, obviously the victim being okay, and her and everything that she had to go through. But the Vikings did release Jeff Gladney. How big of an impact do you see this making for the Vikings this year, Jack? What were you expecting Gladney to be an every down guy, or do you think him and Mac were already going to be splitting snaps, so now it's just kind of Mac's job in the slot?
I think from everything that I've heard leading up to this point, it didn't sound like people within the Vikings organization. I don't know if they even thought that he was going to necessarily be on the team in 2021. I think they were waiting for something for him to get indicted. Obviously, that happened, yesterday or 2 days ago, whenever the news broke. But they went out and they completely rebuilt the cornerback room. And I think they got to the level where they're comfortable without Jeff Gladney in 2021. Looking at the cornerback depth after 2021, it gets a little bit dicey because they bring in three guys that, I mean, essentially the three starting cornerbacks potentially for the Vikings in 2021 are all on 1-year deals, with that being Patrick Peterson. It sounds like Tom Pelissero had a quick snippet out at camp last week, I think, saying they were easing Bashaud Breeland into the defense, kind of or getting him off that injury. And it sounded like when all systems were a go for him, it sounded like he was going to take that cornerback position opposite of Patrick Peterson. Obviously, you have Mackenzie Alexander in the slot. And then I think Cameron Dantzler is a pretty damn good fourth cornerback for this team. So I don't think Gladney was necessarily even in the picture if he was on this roster. There are some depth guys like the Chris Boyds of the world, who's a big locker room presence. I don't know if anyone follows the Vikings on any of their social media accounts, it always seems like Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, and then all of a sudden Chris Boyd is in there. So he seems to be friends with quite a few people in that locker room. Harrison Hand had a lot of buzz circulating around him and OTAs. So I think they have a fine cornerbacks room. Obviously the news sucks. You and I don't want to get on the show and talk about what Jeff Gladney did. I know it's not confirmed or not yet, but we don't want to talk about stuff like that. You just said that. We want to talk about football. It was an ugly situation. It's been an ugly situation for the last 3 months or however months it's been since it happened. I think it was in April that it happened, but it's not fun talking about this stuff. And obviously I agree with everything you said. I don't know if he's going to be in the NFL or not, but they need to figure out the legal stuff before anyone even looks down the road and wants to imagine Jeff Gladney on a football field again.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it. I will say, because we're talking about football, I think I not disagree with you, but I do think he would have played a significant role this season. One, for depth, but two, I think that, he is a Mike Zimmer style of defensive back. He's very physical, has a swagger about him, and I think that I was excited before all of this happened. I was excited to see how much of a leap he made year 1 to 2 in this system, especially because that competition got toned up to 11 with all of the free agency signings that we made. But I think the cornerbacks are fine for like right now. Health is everything on this team. I feel like we're 2 injuries away on the defense from being like, well, we're probably going to be high on Eric Bieniemy next season, and we might as well just wrap it up. Like it's a whole new ball game. But I am. I mean, I'm just disappointed in him because I really like Jeff Gladney. He was. I was excited when we picked him. I thought he was a really good, gonna turn into a really good defensive back, and it just didn't happen. But the Needle, the Needle, not the Needle. I've been playing too much Halo. The Needle, Cameron Danslow, still on the team. I think he showed out last year. Showed some flashes of brilliance, and I think it's on his shoulders. He's the future of the secondary on this team, him and guys like Chris Boyd, if he can take some steps. So moving on from that hot button subject onto something a little easier to talk about. The Vikings have the lowest COVID vaccination rate in the entire NFL. And like none of their quarterbacks, except for Jake Browning, could practice. And so Jake Browning, everyone's like, oh, look at how good he looks. And it's like, well, he doesn't have any competition, like, in terms of guys that are also throwing the ball. Jack, again, I don't want to talk about vaccinations. I don't want to talk about all this, but we're reporting news here. Do you think this is going to play into the season if guys like Cousins, Smith, and Thielen, who have all said they are not vaccinated, do you think that's going to play in, like, to costing us, playoff games or a shot at the playoffs or a Super Bowl championship? Or do you think that, last year they were fine, and then this year they will also be fine? None of them missed games because of COVID. What do you think is going to happen with this?
I think with last year there was a little bit more flexibility, and I think that comes down to the fact that there weren't fans in attendance, because they could have a game on a Wednesday at 9 a.m. if they wanted to, because the stadiums were just sitting open. And it's going to be different this year. I think it could potentially harm some locker rooms too, because like you just said, the Vikings are the lowest lowest vaccinated team percentage wise in the NFL. And even said that I think it's like 70% of them at least have one shot. If 70% of that locker room is vaccinated and they're ready to go, I can just see scenarios being brought into play where so-and-so is vaccinated and so-and-so isn't vaccinated. It's essentially going to be like the state of our country, whatever you want to say, the state of Twitter, the state of our, and it's going to turn into all of this drama. And I don't know, I'm not looking forward to it because it's going to be a long season again. If this is the case, they're going to be, there's a lot of room for people to have a lot more drama within those locker rooms. And I think long-term, yes, this could affect the Vikings going out and potentially winning and losing games. I mean, there's people out there that are against Kirk Cousins and don't want Kirk Cousins as the starter of the Minnesota Vikings. But then when he's sitting out, they're also upset that Kirk Cousins isn't out there practicing. Kirk Cousins is how the Vikings win in 2021. They're not winning with Jake Brown, and they're not winning with Kellen Mond yet, unless Kellen Mond comes in and does like a Russell Wilson or a Dak Prescott rookie season, which I don't think Mike Zimmer and Rick Spielman are going to let him get to that point. I think this is Kirk Cousins' team in 2021. They went out and they readdressed a defense that struggled tremendously last season. They tried to shore up that offensive line a little bit. They have the weapons for them. Everything is in place, but I can see where this could kind of start to crumble and fall apart if, say, we get to week 3, week 4, and something happens similar to what happened literally right before the night practice on Saturday. It all came out Saturday afternoon that, hey, one of the biggest practices of the Vikings training camp in 2021, it's going to be without their new shiny toy and Kellen Mond and their starting quarterback in Kirk Cousins. So it was not the greatest news day for the Vikings. It sounds like they are going to be back on the practice field tomorrow, barring any major setbacks. But yeah, I could see where this could get ugly down the road, and it's going to be a long season if that's what happens.
Yeah, I saw somebody on the internet talking about how, because Cousins isn't vaccinated, that means that, Kellen Mond is going to end up having to play this year, so we're going to get to see him earlier than we all want to, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, Kellen Mond also is not vaccinated. Like, so if they're all in a room together, then if something happens with Cousins, Mond is also going to be sitting out. So it might be Jake Browning might be the emergency guy that has to come in and chuck the ball around a couple of
I
times.
I will say this too. I'm curious how much what everything is being said by from the top down. I mean, they have the Wilfs talking about this. They have Zimmer. I mean, Zimmer's been very adamant
Yeah.
about this. He's said he doesn't want to be around his players that aren't vaccinated. Like Mike Zimmer is Frank, he's ticked off about this. And I wouldn't want to be on Mike Zimmer's bad side personally regarding any subject, but he's made himself and his stance pretty clear on this. And it just seems like more Mike Zimmer said this. What does Kirk have to say to respond to his head coach? It just feels like it's going to go back and forth, and it could get out of hand. But
it's going to be like when he would constantly, they'd be like, hey, Case Keenum's on a 7-game win streak. Is he going to start next week? And he'd be like, well, we'll have to look at practice. And then they'd be like, Case, Zimmer said this, and it was just constant back and forth. And it's like, at some point, I just want to just line them up, do a presidential debate style, like Cousins versus Zimmer on the pros and cons of getting vaccinated. Like,
yeah, we'll see. I think we've talked about it enough now. I mean, it could be a weird season. I could see the season going any way. I could see it going where the Vikings play all 17 games and someone doesn't miss the game, and I could see it. I mean, it's Minnesota sports. You have to take it with a grain of salt. We're in Minnesota. I'm in Minnesota. You're a Vikings fan in Ohio. Minnesota doesn't have good things happen to them very often. And I'm just speaking honestly from the heart on this. I know I'm a younger Vikings fan, only 26 years old, or Vikings, Minnesota, lived in Minnesota my entire life. But when was the last time we have some great news in the state of Minnesota? I don't really know. And it wasn't, I mean, when I woke up and I saw this news breaking on Saturday, I just shrugged my shoulders. I'm used to it at this point. It's like, you know what? They'll figure it out somehow. Either they're going to have to sit out or they're going to end up playing 17 games. Who knows?
Yeah, the most Minnesota Vikings thing that could happen is we have this incredible season. Everyone stays healthy and, everything's looking good. We get to the NFC Championship game. Boom. Outbreak on the team, and it's like Thielen and Smith and Cousins, they're all out. Kellen Mond didn't get vaccinated, so he's out. Jake Browning has to come start a game, and then we still only lose because of a missed field goal. And speaking of the kicking situation, I think it was the last time we were on AO. You were talking about how optimistic you were for this team and how good everything was, and then you said, but don't get me started on that kicking situation. And I thought I was gonna legitimately, have a, I can't think of the term, but I thought I was going to start hyperventilating because I was laughing so hard because it's such an accurate statement from a Vikings fan. Tom Day is saying, is it too early to start talking about Greg Joseph, the kicker for MVP? He's having a good camp. I hate talking about kickers' camps because I'm always like, I don't know. I expect kickers to make all their kicks in practices, and then I see Greg Joseph went 6 for 7 in practice today, and I'm like, but why did he miss one? It's
I know
practice.
He's missed a few here and there. I know he's had some days that are stronger than others. I know he made, I think it was 2 days ago now, or maybe it was last week. All the days are starting to kind of merge together, but he did hit a 52-yard game ending scenario type kick. But I just want to see when they get out on the actual field in Cincinnati week 1, let's see how he kicks then, and then we'll address. I'm sure Vikings fans are going to be freaking out because he goes 1 for 4 on field goals and 3 for 4 on PATs. And if that's the case, then the Vikings might have to bring in some competition. I know they drafted or signed Riley Patterson. I think he was a kicker out of Memphis, but he's been banged up somehow or he got hurt. So there hasn't been a competition there, but I always want competition. Bring in as many possible kickers as you possibly can and find one that Mike Zimmer's okay with, because if Mike Zimmer's okay with the kicker, I think I speak for most people in Minnesota, we'd all be okay with the kicker, because Mike Zimmer never is okay with his kickers. I guess he had a little bit something special with Dan Bailey. He had some trust in Dan Bailey, and then that went out the window last year, obviously. But a season without kicking issues in Minnesota would be fantastic.
Yeah, it'd be tremendous. I still think the last good kicker we had was Kai Felbath, because you look back, I'm just saying, before the Minneapolis Miracle, he made a kick to put us up like 2 points. I mean, in a big game, at, big playoff environment, like, I don't know. There's a lot of comments coming in, but it's talking about the COVID stuff, and we're gonna move on from the COVID stuff, and I don't want to get into the COVID debates and all of that kind of stuff. So we will go ahead. Chris Paxitas does say Minnesota has a lot of lakes, and that's really good news for fishermen. And then he's also talking about his Browns losing wide receivers and stuff, and who cares about that? By the way, if you happen to be watching this and you have interest in the Cleveland Browns, they'll be going live later tonight. Make sure to check them out. But anyway, let's talk about training camp. Let's talk. I said we wanted to talk about the oblong balls. Let's talk about the dang oblong balls. We've talked about domestic abuse and viruses. Let's talk about let's go with the first highlight. The first highlight that I remember seeing out of training camp: Kellen Mond's beautiful pass with Robinson getting pressure. I loved this. Is my favorite part of the year, because it's like every play something amazing happens, because you can't actually get a sack. So if you get pressure, you did one, it's like, oh my God, he's great. And then Mond hits a dime to a receiver. Jack, you fill me in on some of the news. What's been your favorite moment out of training camp so far? And what's the what does NFL insider Jack Day have on where's that roster bubble looking right now?
Well, so my favorite thing out of camp so far is something that you and I think have been talking about now since 2018. I mean, this is a story as old as time in terms of Load the Box, because Jordan and myself have frequently talked about wanting to see Kirk Cousins come out on the field and just play pissed off. Not just come out and throw the ball like you can and be aggressive, and just do not give, I don't want to swear, I almost just swore, but just do not give a rat's blank about anything. And when I was out at practice last Thursday, and when I saw he had one, I think it was like a 25-yard out where he scrambled to the right, escaped pressure, and hit Thielen for a 25-yard kind of drag across the field. And then there was another one, I think, to Osborne for like a 45-yard touchdown reception. After both of them, Kirk Cousins was slapping his lineman on the helmet, and and I'm not kidding when I say this, like he was almost like flexing where you like throw your arms down and just screaming like bloody murder, like let's go. And I was like, you know what? I haven't seen this, and I've been preaching that I want to see this for 3 years now. This might be a different version of Kirk Cousins in 2021. I know there's people out there. I'm sure there's people listening to this podcast right now that don't want to hear that, but I think you will appreciate me saying that, because we've had that conversation. We want to see him come out and be the leader. We know, you and I both know, I know you've had kind of a roller coaster affair with Kirk Cousins, but we both know that when he's at his best, the guy can sling the football around. He's very talented. And I've heard Irv Smith Jr., he's another name who's having a huge camp. I think he scores at least 2 touchdowns every single day, or has one insane catch. It's one or the other. He went on Good Morning Football, I think 2-3 weeks ago now, and they were interviewing him about his season, kind of what he's expecting. And he said the same thing. He said, Kirk Cousins looks like he has a chip on his shoulder. He looks like he has, I think the words he used, he's got a different swagger to him going into the 2021 season. And it was clear as day for me when I was out at training camp. There's so much that we can talk about this Vikings team. I don't know if there's anything that you want to mention about Kirk Cousins, if that makes you feel fuzzy on the inside.
It feels mandatory at this point. And I'm gonna be pessimistic. Okay, so I have 2 things to talk about. The first one is Kirk Cousins. I am so sick and tired of hearing him say, "Yeah, I need to be more mobile. I'm never mobile enough, and I'm not that bad of an athlete. So like, I just need to start using my legs more." And then come game time, he just doesn't. And if this is the year, if he doesn't, like, if I don't see legitimate, like, I start screaming, because every time he takes off, I go nuts. Like, I go ballistic, because he runs like a baby deer. Like, and every time he needs to scramble more. And I'm not talking about designed rollouts. I'm talking about the play breaks down and he extends it just by a little bit by, moving around. I want to see that out of him. I like that he has that fire under him. I do think if he can consistently keep that, he can still be really good even if he's playing as a statue. We just saw Tom Brady win a Super Bowl, and he is the opposite of mobile. But like, we just have to see Cousins use those legs more. And then the other Debbie Downer thing. This is more of a question to you, but Deosaw and Wyatt Davis are both still nursing those injuries that they got drafted with. Davis's knee, and then I think Deosaw's, is it his ankle?
I think it's his groin.
That's
I want to say it's his groin.
Yeah.
So good news actually today. I think today was their second day of pads. Both of them were in pads.
Really?
So they were practicing. Deosaw wasn't doing like team drills or pass rushing drills, but that I mean, I want to say that's fine because he was the first round pick and he's supposed to be more talented, but that's not the case. He's an offensive lineman. I said this earlier in my podcast earlier today. He has some big shoes to fill. The offensive line wasn't great last year, but Riley Reif was one of the consistent factors last year that kept Kirk Cousins upright long enough. Riley Reif was not brutal by any means, and they made the decision to let him go or let him walk to free agency. I can't remember how that happened, but they draft Christian Darrisaw, and he hasn't gotten a lot of repetitions throughout OTAs, mini camp, and now training camp. He, at the very least, was in pads today. Zimmer said he expects him. I think he's close. I want to say I saw something. This could have been another player too, but I thought I saw Darrisaw was going to be ready. I think they have a scrimmage, like an inter squad scrimmage this weekend at US Bank Stadium. I don't know. I think it's this weekend. And I think he plans to be ready for that. And Wyatt Davis was back on the practice field. He was in pads as well. And he was doing contact drills. So I think awesome. he's ready to go. Weird stuff with Wyatt Davis where it's a Minnesota Vikings podcast, so I shouldn't even say weird, but they bump him to the third team center when he has aspirations to be in the first team guard. And it's just like, can we draft a player and let him play at his natural position? Like I read something. Sorry, I have one more thing. Garrett Bradbury said something a couple days ago, essentially saying that Ezra Cleveland looks stronger. He looks more physical. He looks better. And he thinks he's way more comfortable playing left guard. He's always been on the left side of the offensive line. And Bradbury said something along the lines of switching positions is hard enough, but switching to the opposite side of the offensive line, people don't understand how hard of a transition that can be. So getting Ezra Cleveland back to the left side of the line, I think is going to do wonders for this football team.
I would just like to say, just on that Ezra Cleveland thing, I have seen people talking and they're like, it's offensive line. Like it's, just hit people, keep them away. And it's like, just if you're a right-handed person, just try to write your name with your left hand and, go ahead. And then imagine having to do that, but, instead of writing your name, imagine having to just do things opposite. Only there's a 300-pound man that wants to kill you on the other side of you. What I want to see, though, my biggest fear, I don't want to see Dakota Dozier and Rashad Hill starting at week 1 against the Bengals. I think that's what most fans have stuck in their minds is, are they going to be ready for week 1? Are they going to be ready for week 1? I know the Bengals had the number 3 pick in this year's draft. As someone from Cincinnati, maybe I'm drinking some of the Kool-Aid down here, but the Bengals look like, I think they have a chance to finish in third in that division instead of dead last this year. They have a lot of really good weapons. They signed the aforementioned Riley Reif, so he's going to be protecting Joe Burrow, who should be ready to come back for week 1. And then their defense is still so-so, but my concern is I don't want to underestimate them and then, Rashad Hill get just demolished the entire game through. So do you think that they're going to be able... Do you think that they'll take some reps in the first preseason game? That's kind of the question.
I'm not sure. I'm really interested to see how preseason is going to work this year because obviously they chopped off one of the preseason games and added that into the regular season. So I don't know. I think usually when there was 4, it was kind of that week 3 preseason game is where the starters go out and they play a full half of football. I have no idea. I think at this point you have to throw the entire offensive line out there and just kind of see what you have. A name that I've been hearing nothing but good things about is Oli Udoh, who we've talked about a few times in the past on the show. If Oli Udoh wins that right guard spot and they kind of it's a Mike Zimmer thing and it's been a Mike Zimmer thing, they don't like forcing rookies onto the field if they don't have to. If they can ease, Wyatt Davis said something today along the lines of he wants to learn the playbook and get everything under his belt before he wants to worry about being a starting offensive lineman for this team. If they don't feel like Wyatt, I mean, I've seen videos of the guy mauling over people at training camp in the last week, but he needs to get the playbook figured out. And I don't know where that whole process is at, but he mentioned something in a press conference today. So it's starting to seem more and more likely that we're going to see Darisaw starting at left tackle and Oli Udo, who I think you and I have talked about several times since that week 17 game against Chicago, that meaningless game that Mackenzie Alexander got hurt in, by the way, and apparently wanted to leave Mike Zimmer and the Minnesota Vikings forever. We all know how that turned out now with Mackenzie Alexander being back in Minnesota, but I agree. I saw a tweet that I think Zimmer said that the competition for right guard is between Oli Udo, Drew Samia, and Dakota Dozier. And I think I think half of Minnesota had mini heart attacks when they read that tweet. So
I think all Oli of Minnesota Udo is united under Oli Udo, and they were like, "Come on, Oli!"
if it's not Oli Udo or Wyatt Davis starting at that right guard spot, I think a lot of Vikings fans are going to be disappointed. I know there's a lot of high hopes for Wyatt Davis, and there can still be high hopes with him not being the starter week 1. I mean, he could get to a point halfway through the season where it's like, this guy knows everything, and it's like night and day difference. Like, this guy belongs as a starting offensive lineman, not only for our team, but in the NFL.
Well, and having him, and I don't know how the cuts are going to play out. We will see. But right now, having that flexibility of having Oli Udo right guard, and then you have a Wyatt Davis waiting in the wings, and then you have Ezra Cleveland, who could play left tackle if we needed him to step in. Rashad Hill is obviously a swing backup. I like the depth that we have along the offensive line. The issue is, the last time I thought highly of a rookie that was going to come in and play guard, it was Drew Samia, and he was so incredibly bad. And I don't want to overhype any of those guys, but I do think highly of all of those guys. I think they all have really high potential. So it makes it to where if we do have to rearrange some pieces on the offensive line, I do think that the Vikings could be okay. Fingers. Same with the kicking situation. It's like, I think we'll be okay. Let's all hold our breath and cross our fingers, and we'll see what happens once we start playing football that really means something. I want to flip over really quick to the defensive side of the ball just for the last few minutes that we have here. One, let me go to the chat. Chris Paxitas, thank God football is back. I absolutely agree with you, buddy. Football, such a wonderful time of year. It's August. It's starting to cool down in Ohio. It's going to get hot again. It's going to be like 105 soon, I'm sure. But those have been nice breezes. I'm ready for fall and then winter and football. But anyway, Tom Day says, Cousins, I'm faster than most people think. I'm surprised we have not heard from Tom Day since we just did a whole thing with the offensive line. And that is the Tom Day section of the show. That was all of that was sponsored by Tom Day. Moving to the defensive side of the ball, I haven't heard a ton on the obviously, Robinson is having a good camp, I've heard, and I feel like I've heard good things about Xavier Woods as well. Am I incorrect in thinking that?
Yeah, I know Xavier Woods was kind of one of those guys throughout like OTAs, especially like before training camp. Like, there was that video circulating where it was like, who said that to him? I think it was Paul Gunther, the senior defensive assistant or whatever title Zimmer has, where he brings in someone that has experience and just wants him on his staff. He was saying, he's like, I haven't seen a guy come in and communicate on a new team like you in my entire life of doing this. And like, that speaks volumes. If you can get a guy that knows what he's doing next to Harrison Smith, that can be that ball hawk type safety, which I know he's a little bit undersized, but he's flying around and I've heard good things about him as well. The biggest news for any Vikings fan out there, I think, is the fact that Danielle Hunter's out there. And not only is Danielle Hunter out there, Danielle Hunter looks good. Danielle Hunter looks like he's back to being Danielle Hunter. I know there's some people that are kind of pumping the brakes on that, but like, when I was out there, I know there wasn't pads on. I've seen some videos with the pads on. It's like Danielle Hunter just basically doing whatever he wants. And granted, I don't remember the tackle that he was going up against. It might have been Rashad Hill, or it might have been someone behind Rashad Hill even, but he made him look silly. And Danielle Hunter, having that back on this roster is going to be huge, along with the new interior defensive lineman that they went out and got. I've heard and seen Stephen Weatherly and DJ Wanham have been lining up at that third linebacker spot. So I am excited to see what this defense is going to look like. I said this earlier as well. It always seems like, I don't know why this happens or what the scenario around it is, but it gets brought up every single even year. The Vikings have a down year. Every single odd season, they bounce back. And every single odd season when they bounce back, it seems like Zimmer comes in with new, like, I'm not saying he completely changes the defense, but he adds some new wrinkles to his defense, and he comes ready to play. Like, if people figure out his defense, I don't even think that was necessarily the case in 2020. They just had an extreme lack of depth in 2020, and they went out and they fixed that free agency, spent all of their money on the defensive side of the ball. And I think Mike Zimmer has all of the tools that he needs to completely flip this defense. There's a report that came out of The Athletic. The name of the reporter is escaping me, but he ranked all 32 defenses, and he had your Minnesota Vikings ranked as the number one defense, which speaks volumes. If you're going from the defense they had last year to a potential, even if it's a top 5, top 10 defense, if the offense can do what they did in 2020, I think this is going to be a very special season.
Yeah, I cannot get over. I mean, it is the meat, just the absolute, that we have some big men up front. And I went back because I just got Game Pass for this season, and I, was looking, and oh my God, I rewatched that Saints game from Christmas Day, and I mean, it was bad. I had to call my wife, and I was in tears, and it was this whole big thing. But like, my God, I mean, they were just blowing us off the ball every single play. It was like clockwork, hike, destroyed. Alvin Kamara goes for like 18,000 touchdowns or whatever it was. And I think that game, we will look back on and we'll be like, probably when we beat the Saints in the playoffs this year, we'll look back and be like, yeah, you guys beat us on Christmas. And it pissed Mike Zimmer off so much he went and spent the entire budget on a wall like his name was Donald Trump. He was just like, we're building a wall. We're doing it. I'm not trying to get political. I just thought that was a funny joke. But like, he just went, he got, all these big men. He gets Danielle Hunter back into the building. And now we're going to have that steady pass rush. The defensive line is all I'm going to be watching this season. If anyone goes over 115 yards on us this season, I would be surprised. If the linebackers are healthy and the defensive line is healthy, my God, who's running the ball on us?
Yeah, the word you just said, the meat up front, is a word that Eric Kendricks actually just said. There's a thing circulating around Twitter where there's like a T-shirt. Someone designed a T-shirt and everything. And he said something. He's like, I got some meaty boys in front of me. And I think the number is stuck in it. I think it's engraved in my mind. I could be wrong. I'm almost positive I'm right on this. So I think the total weight of Delvin Tomlinson and Michael Pierce combined is like 658 pounds. So, and then they go out and they get Sheldon Richardson, who, oh, by the way, can come into that 3-tech spot and rush after the passer from the interior, which is huge. And then I'm excited about the defense. And I just some final thoughts on the other side of the ball. We just went through an entire show without bringing up the wide receivers, and my Lord, Justin Jefferson has torched every single cornerback on this Vikings roster. There was a video of him torching Patrick Peterson today. I'm not sure if you saw the one of him with Dantzler where
yes, I saw Dantzler
really made Dantzler look
Dantzler
silly.
Was like, oh, he got me on that one. And I was like,
yeah, he's like they were running digs all day and then he ran a out route. But anyways, Jefferson has torched every corner that they put in front of him, and I have extremely high expectations for him this season. I mean, they're giving this guy, a guy who came in as the 5th drafted wide receiver last year, already had a chip on his shoulder, already had this slight edge to him where it's like me against the world type attitude. And now you're ranking him as like the 17th best wide receiver in Madden. There's people leaving him out. You analysts out there, if you want to keep doing that, please do, because I think it helps the Minnesota Vikings in the long run if you want to continue to piss off Justin Jefferson. But Adam Thielen has also been making highlight reel catches. And then I just wanted to touch on this wide receiver 3 spot. Another injury that was unfortunate.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think it's the end of the world, but BC Johnson he always seems to kind of have his name in the conversation and throughout camp. Like he always has decent training camp at the
I feel
very
like
least.
he's had like not a good year, but he
Yeah, but
always has a couple of good games a year where it's like, oh yeah, BC
and
Johnson, like
he's a good guy to have on your depth chart as well. Like if someone gets hurt, like if BC needs to go out there, yes, it's not Justin Jefferson or Adam Thielen, but he's an NFL caliber wide receiver that can get the
yeah,
job done. And
and
if
he's
you
been
put
with
him
the
out as
team a
the
long time too. He knows the
yes.
playbook.
Having said that, one player that I don't think anyone was expecting to be talking about as much as they are throughout training camp, KJ Osborne has been having a huge camp. And I know he was talking about something where he was everything he did this offseason, he was surrounding himself with athletes and wide receivers that are obviously a lot better and well known than he is. And he's been blowing it up at camp. I swear every single day I see a tweet from one of the team reporters saying KJ Osborne appreciation tweet. He just did this, this, and this. And it's like, if KJ Osborne can step into even like I don't want to say he was disappointing last year, but he was a 5th round rookie out of Miami, I believe. And like I said, Mike Zimmer doesn't like forcing rookies on the field, and especially if they're not ready to be on the field. And quite frankly, I don't think he was ready to be on the field last year. It sounds like he's taken strides. And the last little nugget within this position group is Amir Smith-Marset looks insanely fast. And at the very least, I think it's fair to expect. And I didn't even bring up D.D. Westbrook. We didn't even talk about
Oh my god!
Look at this. I'm
We've
getting
been
so
gone
excited.
for too long. We have been gone for too long.
I think obviously D.D. Westbrook, if he gets back off that torn ACL, I think it was like 8 or 9 months ago. If he's healthy, he's gonna, just because he has that veteran presence, I think he's gonna be the favorite to win that wide receiver 3 spot. But hearing that KJ Osborne is having a good camp and God, that's a hard one for me to say for some reason. Amir Smith-Marset is having a good camp and just blowing past people when he gets the ball in his hands. At the very least, you can use him in the return game, or you can kind of use him as a gadget player. I've heard the same thing about Kini Nwangu.
I was literally waiting because I was about to bring up the running backs and talk about him.
I mean, there's a lot of good things. We've kind of been blinded with all the negativity that's been circulating with the COVID stuff and the Jeff Gladney news. If you kind of bury some of that stuff, there's been a ton of buzz around this team, and I think Vikings fans should be extremely excited.
Yeah, I was gonna go ahead and I will touch on the Emil Smith-Marset. His speed. I brought it up, I think, during one of the post-draft shows. Obviously, it was before we went on break. Talking about how a couple of years ago we brought in Aldrick Robinson to just be this, like, you're gonna want go routes, and if Coke feels like he should throw it to you, if he thinks you have a good matchup, he'll throw it to you. Otherwise, you're literally just there. So, the one guy, it's going to take one guy completely out of the play, maybe a second one if that safety goes with you. So I think that, he's going to be a guy that is going to, I think he'll be out there, not a ton, but I think he'll get a couple of snaps every game where, he has the potential. It's like, run as fast as you can, and then Cousins will try and get you the ball if he can, if you get open. So I'm excited to hear about him. But KJ Osborne, obviously, Shako, brought in to be a tone guy, wasn't very good at it. Kind of was flying under the radar all off season as like are we going to cut this guy? What's going on? And now he's emerging as like, hey, I know we just got Westbrook, but like, I've got seniority over him with the team. And, I'm also, though I've gotten better at what I do. But, okay, help me pronounce the running back's name, because I always read it and I say, oh, God,
I don't know if it's Kini or I think it's Kini Nwangu.
All right.
Nwangu is how you say it, I think.
Nwangu. Well, he's having a really good camp. I'm super duper excited about him. I just worry about him. I worry about the running back room because we have Cook, obviously, no question. He's on the team, all right? We extended him, all of that. Then we have Madison, who I think is a very solid backup running back. And then it's kind of like, are we going to keep 4 running backs? Because now it's Nwangu and it's Amir Abdullah. So, like...
Plus CJ Ham fits into that role, too.
So are we keeping 5 then? Are we going to keep 5 running backs?
And to take that one step further, I guess I shouldn't say I'm 90% positive, because I literally have no idea where they're going to go with the 53-man roster. I think there's a really good chance they have 3 quarterbacks on the roster this year too,
Yeah.
which they don't normally do because you're not gonna. I mean, you have to roster Mond, and do you want a rookie as your backup, or is Jake Browning done enough to win that spot? One last thing, and then I'll let it go back to you.
Absolutely.
Amir Smith-Marset was the wide receiver that you were talking about to open the show, who caught the pass
Yeah.
from Kellen Mond.
Yeah, I forgot that was him on it. I knew it was I knew it wasn't Jefferson or Thielen, but I forgot that it was Smith Marset. But I just worry who's gonna end up. Ham and Cook are the two obvious, like they're not going anywhere. I would say Madison has also done enough to solidify himself as that, that backup running back, especially with Dalvin's injury history. I think Madison comes in and could be like the bell cow per se. But man, Nwangu is like he's just having such a good camp. He's a freak athlete. I would hate to lose Amir Abdullah. He seems like he's a really big locker room guy, and he does do some really good things in the receiving game and also in the return game. He's a veteran that I have some faith in that he's not gonna fumble, even though I think he fumbled like twice last year. But that's neither here nor there. I would hate to lose him, but I don't know. I'm excited for preseason to start. I'm excited to see these guys
Yes.
play football. I know it's preseason, doesn't mean anything, but like I'm excited to see the Vikings get these guys out there against another team and just see what happens. And I know defenses aren't game planning and offenses aren't, picking apart weaknesses and things of that nature. I'm just excited to see these guys on the field in competition of some sort. But honestly, with that, I don't know if there's anybody else. Here? I'll give you one last chance for shout outs because I'm sure NFL Insider Jack has all the hot takes and all of the guys that he wants to talk about. I think I'm good in terms of who I want to talk about. What do you have? Who do you have? I should say that you want to talk about to give a spotlight to really quick.
Yeah, I feel like I've ranted on about a lot of the guys that I'm excited for. I'm looking down here at the full 90-man roster that I got from camp, and I have a few guys highlighted still. But I mentioned this name when I was talking about Kirk Cousins, but I want to almost say this again because I said this about KJ Osborne and seeing a tweet. It seems like daily for him. The tweets, my Twitter feed with all the Vikings beat reporters that I follow has been everything around Irv Smith Jr. I don't think I have seen one negative tweet or one negative post about the camp that Irv Smith Jr. is having, which is huge for this team. Obviously, they lose Kyle Rudolph this offseason. I think Tyler Conklin is a little bit dinged up. I don't think he practiced yesterday or today. Could be wrong on that, but Irv Smith Jr. is making the most of his opportunities. He's scoring in the red zone. He's doing what you and I like to say in between the 20s, where I think he's the most dangerous with his speed. He is a very, very good. I think he could almost fill that wide receiver 3 void for this team, but he's a tight end, and that means you get to have him on the tight end, and then you can bring out a D.D. Westbrook and have another speedster out on the field, which is huge. I think Irv Smith is going to have a fantastic season. On that Good Morning Football interview, I think they said they gave him some pretty high expectations. It was like 1,000-yard season along with 8 or 9 touchdowns or something along those lines. I know Zimmer said something about having expectations for Tyler Conklin, how his role is going to increase. I am just so excited about so many different phases of this roster. I mean, there's people to be excited about in every position room. I mean, we just went through an entire show and we didn't even talk. I mean, we mentioned it briefly, but we didn't talk that much about a guy like Patrick Peterson or Bashad Breeland. We have we have a cornerback that is a future Hall of Famer. I will say that in Patrick Peterson. Patrick Peterson is 31 years old. He's the same age as Xavier Rhodes, which when I heard that, I was dumbfounded. That is crazy to me. I thought Xavier Rhodes is way younger than him, or not a few years at least. But if there's any coach in the world that I put my faith in flipping a guy's career back on track, it's Mike Zimmer with his D-backs. And it's Patrick Peterson, who was and is still, I think, a lot better than what Terrence Newman was when Mike Zimmer had this first project where he brought Terrence Newman back in. But man, if you can't tell right now, I'm just jacked up about the football season. I'm jacked up about college football. I'm excited to go out and watch high school. I'm just excited for football to be back, man, and cool, refreshing air, breeze in the window, some
Yes.
chili on a Sunday morning, and
Doing a
just
show
watching.
and looking out the window and seeing like, it's blizzarding, and I'm just like, oh man. Like it's
Yes.
just it's a great time. It's my favorite time of the year. I won't talk about, meteorology and, weather patterns, and, I think everyone that's
It's cause you're not a true Minnesotan. If you
I-
lived in Minnesota, you would talk about the weather
well,
every chance that you had.
Ohio, we'll still talk about the weather. I just don't think it's electric entertainment. But
True.
no, obviously, I think we have similar, which is surprising to me because when I was growing up, Minnesota was all igloos and ice fishing year round. And come to find out, you guys basically have the same exact weather as us. You just get a little bit, like you get like an inch or two most of snow a year.
Yeah, the
like,
winters are probably a little harsher, like
yes, but
negative
like,
temperature wise. But
yeah.
what you're saying, yeah, I mean, we
But
have
we
four
still have
seasons.
the same seasons.
You have 4
Yeah,
seasons. Yes.
it's not like you're in Antarctica, and that's what I was led to believe. I thought that the Vikings were playing games in August, and they had the space heaters out, and they were out there in the coats and stuff. But anyway, I'm gonna do a final reading of comments. Tom Day, I think I already said I did. I'm faster than most people think. Karen Marie Cloudman, I'm going to say this wrong, I think, DeJonko, said, hi, Jack, good to see you. So Jack fans are out in full force. Amy Van Dam said, fun to hear you, gents. Tom Day said for his player he wanted to acknowledge, apple does not fall far from the tree. Irv Smith. And then Tom Day said a weatherman show coming soon to Load the Box Media Network. Just a show where we talk about how much we appreciate seasons. We'll get some guys from like Florida in here to talk about their weather, and it'll be a whole
I
thing.
mean, just to show like how obsessed I am with football and the chances of seeing football in cold weather. I mean, when the Vikings are playing at TCF Bank Stadium, I wanted to go so bad to a game, and my dad and my brothers, we went to a game. It was one of the last games against the Jets, and it was freezing outside, and I loved every second of it.
Yeah.
I was at the Seattle game, the Frozen Tundra game,
Right.
and I am contemplating, if I can make it work, going out to Lambeau Field for that Sunday night game in January. I'm contemplating it. That remains to be seen. That'll be addressed on this show down the road, I'm sure, if it does happen, but we'll see.
I will say, I think I've told you this. I don't know if I did it on camera or if I did it off camera. If I could time machine myself back to any game in Vikings history, I've said it would probably be that Seattle game. Like, I know there are some that are victories, but good Lord, like to see like my Vikings, like, because the old 70s teams, those weren't my Vikings, those were the Vikings before I was born. But to see my Vikings, like, just in this brutally cold game, and Bud Grant in the polo walking out, and it's -12 with the wind chill. An insane game, a heartbreaking game, but good God, would I want to see that live. It was a 10-9, just nasty football game. And also Teddy was there, and he's, my favorite guy in the entire world. So, also, last bit of news from me. This is my closing statement of the night. Aaron Rodgers is back, so I cannot wait to see him just get hunted down by the meaty mess that is the Vikings defensive line this season. I think he came back. I think that's what caused the holdout personally, was he was like, oh man, I want to go play in Denver. Like, nobody there has a pass rush. Like, I guess the Chargers maybe. But anyway, Aaron Rodgers is back. We didn't talk about that. Not Vikings news, but obviously Vikings related news. He's thrown a lot of shade too, but that's where I'll leave it, Jack. I'll pass it off to you, and then we can get out of here.
Yeah, I don't want to take too long, but I will just throw this out there. I'm excited for the NFC North in 2021. I think the NFC North, prediction-wise, is back to how it should be. And how it should be is the Vikings being good and the Packers being good, and both of them going at it. Like, I feel like even when the Vikings had that really good season in 2017, like Aaron Rodgers got hurt. So it was like, it hasn't really felt like that true rivalry, like the Randy Moss days, where it was like a real rivalry.
Right.
Like, and I want that back. I mean that it just makes football more fun. And I've said this, and I'll go on the air right now and say it again. I think the Vikings right now are good enough to beat the Packers with or without Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, yeah.
This is an extremely talented team. I am jacked up about this. Jordan's jacked up about this. I know there's a lot of Vikings fans that are excited going into the 2021 season. I'm excited to see the Mike Zimmer defense get back out there in full force and be a true dominant Mike Zimmer defense. And I think I'll leave you with this. I really think this is the year. It's make or break for a lot of people in this organization. It could be make or break for Zimmer. It could be make or break for Kirk Cousins. And I think we could potentially see one of the best seasons out of Kirk Cousins, because I think things are finally going to start to click. And this has not a lot to do with Kirk Cousins. I think the pieces of the puzzle are in place finally. I mean, the expectations in 2018 when he came into this locker room was, hey, the defense is still the best of the best. It's not going to get beat. That's not true. I went to a game in LA where I watched the Rams hang up 38 points and we lost 38-31, where Kirk Cousins almost led a comeback. And it was like, it never matched up. The defense would have a good game. The offense would have a bad game. The offense would have a good game. It was always like that. I think this is the year where that's going to kind of flatline and meet in the middle a little bit. And Vikings fans should be extremely excited. I'll leave it. I want to just keep going. All I want to do is talk about football.
Man.
But
I understand it.
I'll leave it at that. I'm jacked up. You're excited about this. Everyone should be excited.
Quick TO before you hit the catchphrase. It's been showing on the little ticker down at the bottom this entire show. Go give us a follow on Twitter. It's not difficult. It's like 5 clicks of a button. You might have to type in @LTB Vikings. It's not difficult, and we appreciate every one of our followers. The road to 1100 is still going. It's trudging along, but we'll get there eventually.
We might be over 1100.
If we're over 1100, I'm gonna feel like an idiot.
It's the road. It might be the. Let me.
If we're on the road to 1200.
We are on the road to 12.
My God, honey, get the good champagne, because we have hit 1100, and I didn't even realize it. But go follow the show @LTB Vikings for, obviously just absolute electric tweets and fun things. And I'm sure Jack's going to tell us that, like, Kurt Warner's coming out of retirement to come play with the Vikings soon. He's got something up his sleeve. I know he does. He's been quiet lately on the text messages. But thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you get subbed to the YouTube channel too. And if you want to like the video, that helps us out a lot too. Smash that like button, and then leave comments, share it on with your friends. Word of mouth is a great way to get the show around. We just want to get our fun opinions out to everybody. And this show really lightened up, because at the beginning of it, it felt like a ton of books, because all the COVID and all that stuff had to be talked about. So I'm glad we got that out of the way and then had fun. But I just wanted to throw that in there. Also follow @JackDay or @Jack_H_Day, and then @JHawthorne16. And then after that, I'm done. Finally.
You can tell it's been a while. We're forgetting Twitter handles.
I
almost forgot my saying I was about to say. I was like, what do I say? It's been a while. We're going to get back into the swing of things. We'll be more fluid, I think, in the upcoming weeks. Not saying we weren't tonight, but we're going to
get our training camp for us. Yeah,
we're going to get our feet back underneath us. And the Twitter, go follow the Twitter. It hasn't been extremely active, but there hasn't been a lot of stuff going on. That will change here in the upcoming weeks with the preseason, the regular season starting, and all the camp news. Make sure to follow along. It's going to be a fun